Interoception, a very full word for a very complicated system, a system that is involved in our physical well-being as well as in our emotional well-being. When we consider the interoceptive system inside of us, it's almost like the landing place where all the external sensory systems have to land. In my vagus nerve, which is also part of my parasympathetic system, which is also my calming, my rest and digest system, that vagus nerve oftentimes can cause us some trouble. It's the same nerve that we would like to suppress when we're feeling very anxious, when we're feeling that I need to remain vigilant about my environment. I need to understand what's coming at me. So I really thrive on maybe some sympathetic over-arousal, and I sort of diminish the impact of inhibition that comes from my parasympathetic system. Practically speaking, you want to think about your car. And when you're putting your foot down on the gas, that's your arousal system and you accelerate. That's your sympathetic nervous system. And then when you are feeling like, okay, if I keep doing this, I'm going to crash. So the way I can adjust the balance of speed in my car is by lifting my foot from the gas through my parasympathetic system, my vagus nerve. So the way that the amount of pressure I put on the gas pedal and the balance I keep between not over accelerating, not slowing too much, that balance is what we are looking at. And it's really a huge part of the maintenance of the vagus nerve, which is then also feeding our interoceptive system. And so our interoceptive system tells us if we're hungry. It tells us if we are needing to defecate, we need to urinate. It's telling us how the temperature, how we feel when we shiver. It gives us a gauge on those pieces. It also tells us how we feel in our bodies. Think about when you feel a flutter of butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous. That's your interoceptive system speaking to you. So a very cool system to think about. But in many children that we treat, they have a little love-hate relationship with the parasympathetic system and with this whole idea of becoming calm. And many of our over-aroused, anxious kids really don't have an idea what we're saying when we say, calm down, because they don't know what that feels like. The anxiety keeps their arousal system at such an edge that they don't really get that feeling of what it means to just go home and relax tonight and put your feet up on the couch and chill. So when we think about the interoceptive piece, Kelly Mahler, who is a prominent OT in the field of interoception, talks about that interoceptive awareness, IA as she calls it, is the ability to notice my body signals and the ability to connect those body signals to emotion. I think that's a nice, simple definition that we can really think about. I also listened to Dr. Ruth Lanius a while ago at the Attach conference a number of years ago, and again, I think last year. Wonderful, wonderful researcher, Canadian researcher that talks about mental health, trauma, and attached pieces to that. And she says that if we want to develop an embodied self, a self that feels grounded, that feels like I like myself and this is who I am in a given moment, these are the things that she talks about. Balance, having balance, feeling equalized in my surroundings and my relationship to others, my body in space, which is something we as OTs work on all the time. And then we have, how do I see myself in this moment in time as I'm also seeing myself from past experiences and looking into the future experiences and expectations? Where am I landing right now on that continuum? If I've had a trauma experience, I may experience the present as if I am in the past. right? And if I'm somebody that simply wants to just forge ahead, I can't enjoy my present moment because I'm simply just thinking about next day, next day, next day. So that part is part of the essence of who we are. And then if we can talk about ourselves in a first person perspective, I, me, my, and can say, this is where I land, this is who I am. And then having the capacity to know how I feel. So many kids, when we do our assessments and we ask them for a simple heart drawing exercise that Dr. Art Becker Weidman taught me, and we ask them just to choose a color for the emotion sad, mad, um, being scared, and you look at that and you find how they are so afraid of feeling those negative emotions, how the negative emotions threaten to derail them. And can I really call it negative emotions? I don't know, because I don't think any emotion is really negative. They all serve. But I'm saying that the ones who negatively impact them, that they feel overwhelmed by the arousal. I think that's a better way of putting it. So when we are in balance, our sympathetic parasympathetic systems are in a nice, just right place, which mental health also calls a window of tolerance that allows us to deal with the expectations of every day. Enough arousal to get the job done and enough ways of getting ourselves into a calm space so that we don't maintain that cortisol levels in our body from too much stress for too long a period of time. So it's our well-being, it's our key for survival, it's what we need. If something happens right now, like we see in war-torn countries, we're able to survive through these systems. We're able to cope and adjust through these systems that we have available to us. And all of this very, very linked to the whole interoceptive piece. It's almost like my visual sense, my auditory sense, all the other senses are taking in information, and it's needing to find a landing place. It's needing to connect. I think Ruth Lanius talks about an area in the brainstem called the periaqueductal gray, and that's the area where the external meets the internal. And that's also where the vagus nerve sort of starts, at that area, or very close to that area. So important considerations. If we don't develop interoception, it's very frequently seen that there's a big lack of perspective of others. It's difficult to develop empathy for myself and for others. And that's a problem for especially trauma survivors, because empathy for myself is not there because I feel less worthy because of what happened to me, which is of course not a logical piece. It's an emotional piece. But that sense of worth that comes from self-empathy, and then if I have self-empathy, I can also develop my empathy for others. Doesn't mean we don't have it available to us. It means that it's in hiding. And when you have kids who are so sensorially impacted and they just cannot get that balance in their systems, right? Then it's very hard for them to think of themselves as somebody that can also have the bandwidth to take care of somebody else's feelings when they have so much of their own feelings going on for them. There's also social tactlessness, not assessing risk. Self-control can be at risk. Social norms may or may not make sense to you. Controlling emotions. And then also just, how sometimes you say, I just feel it in my gut, right? I just get it in my gut. Well, that gut piece is also your interoceptive piece. So yes, every system needs to be, every sensory system needs to have a certain amount of arousal and a certain amount of calming. And the big part of calming that comes in is coming through the interoceptive system. And therefore, we have to take care of it. We have to intervene and we have to create a treatment plan for it. So thank you for listening, and I will see you another time.